Good morning, guys. Welcome to Up and Smart. Just going to have time for a quick run through all the races, hopefully. Uh, let's start in the first and let's have a look at P stats. So, probability stats here, you see 61%, 61 races that we've had so far at Fairview over the 1200 meter at the Class G. And of those 61 races, the top rated, and you can change that to first, second, third, or top six, or whatever, top rated to win or finish first. You can also change that to see for places, third, fourth, etc. But let's just look at top rated to finish first here. Has a 37% chance to win based on opening betting, and that goes to Champagne Charlie. It has a 21% chance on the EXP percentage or exotic percentage and the overall ranking, and that is going to likable with a 21%. You can also see there's a 4.95% difference between likable on the overall ranking and the next one, Begonia, and then you'll see 18% to Champagne Charlie and 30% from the top to Antonio Augusta, etc. So that's what that table's about. So if you look at this from a percentage perspective as probability from that big sample of 61, then Champagne Charlie has got the highest probability. That's something that I always look at, and basically if my probability stats agrees with my artificial intelligence and my machine learning here, which is the left and the right of these brains here, and you see the artificial intelligence also agrees with Champagne Charlie, and the total points doesn't. It goes to likable being the first one, and then the ranking average, these yellow stars, is this JTR detail. That 1 star and 2 star goes to this JTR detail, and if I go to race 1 and I rank or sort it by average and I hover over that best one of 2.4, so out of this 8 he has a 2.4 average, it goes to Begonia. That's the yellow 1 star. Then second is likable, third is Champagne Charlie, and then there's quite a gap of 1.27 to Wonder Woman, etc. While we're on this, I normally look at these and see, okay, where there's a nice gap, then I know that horse has a really strong chance of being competitive. So there's not that big a gap. If I go further, see a little bit of a gap here for Indie View, decent gaps, 0.7 to High Siri next. Here, 0.4 is not a big gap from Divine Odyssey to Jager Moon, and then Barak. Race 5, 0.8 of a difference here for Ancestral Prayer onto Silver Slippers and Global Goddess. Race 6, the top 3 is pretty close. Race 7, a little bit of a 0.6 gap on Narcos to Cliff Top, and then there's quite a gap of over 1 to the third best Slings and Arrows, and we'll get to Slings and Arrows just now. Something I noticed from Slings and Arrows that was interesting is the top 4 rated for, you can see the same P stats here, probability stats 34, top rated to run a place, and that gives you 100% on line bat, and line bat top rated is that one, which is 10 Slings and Arrows at 40 to 1. So interesting to note those kind of little things. And if I move over to the 8th race, then the biggest gap of the day between the top on the ranking average, 3.41 on Montrezor, and the next best, 5.38 on Calvino, and then 5.45 to raise the Red Lantern, and Jaguar Cat 6.14. So you'll see there's a nice big gap here in this kind of size of the field. 3.14 to 5.38 is a really good gap, and that the biggest gap of the day goes to Montrezor. So things that you really should be looking at. Then quickly on the JTR combo, just looking at the JTR combo, I can see who's going to have a great day, and you can have it on trainer here, or you can click it on the jockeys to just check which jockeys are going to have a great day. So now you are ranked by the different jockeys, so you simply go look at these jockeys and say, oh, who's really standing out a little bit. So there's a nice car straight on there, there's another nice K straight on there, and then there's a nice Makotwa there. So you can look at it from a jockey perspective. I prefer looking at it from a trainer perspective because that's where the intent comes from. And then I see things like Cliffy Miller and with Muzi Yeni. Strong Echoes of Winter, not so strong on Twice a Saint, but Prince of Heaven is looking better there. Strong on Silver Slippers, even stronger on false power, and very strong on Montresor, the one I just showed you there. So that looks like there's really intentions there to perform today, those kind of things. And also when you want to look at which trainers are going to try doubles, you look at these kind of things. So you see here Begonia followed on to strong Spring Fever as an example. Once they materialize, you'll see the actual result popping in here, so then you can make those distinctions. And that's how we found Desert Pride at 25-1 yesterday, that we gave on the VIP group for 50 or 55 points profit. Those are the kind of things that really, when you use this system properly, you can see those things. Yes, Divine Odyssey looks pretty good, and here Stolen Kiss looks pretty good, for example. So that could potentially be a Tara Lang double. So that's how we use these. And on the side here, you see that's the number of runs since his last win. So Alan Krief won his last runner, and that's the ranking of the trainer, and that's the ranking of the jockey. And if you see a little flame, then the trainer and the jockey has a very strong connection for the season. That's what you see there. Those numbers is the number of jockeys that you have, that this jockey has for the day. Like all these work riders has only got the one for the day, for instance. So those are the kind of things that also nicely stands out. But these things you should know already by just watching the tutorial video, but I keep on repeating myself because it seems people's not watching the tutorial video. However, if you equip yourself with the tools, then you'll have a much better strike rate than opinions of people, because this is not opinions, this is what the data shows. So yeah, in the first, Champagne Charlie, as we saw in the P-stats, 37%. And then the other two to consider is Likeable, which on the Turffontein 1200 Fairview actually did the best here on a 0.51, which is the BAT CD, the exact course and exact distance, that 0.51, and that's quite a bit better than the rest of the field. So that's one that has potential, has a gear change as well, as at 6-1. It's got the best overall ranking, greenie points, exotic ranking, exact distance, median speed, all those at 21% to win. So also one with a say, but this is a work riders, so it's not cut and dry who's going to win this. Then Jock Stratham's got a big intent here. Begonia looks pretty decent here as well, had some support lately based on the speed rating, has the 84-day bat figure here, the 4.39 that we see pulling through. That was on the poly. So if you look at the turf, 10 and 7, but look down here, 1000 Scottsville of turf and 1000 Scottsville, 1100 Scottsville turf. These two runs was even better than Likeable, a minus 0.45, which means it's better than this class standard by 0.45 lengths. So Begonia, based on those two records, if you can improve and get back to those kind of records, very much in the hunt as well. You'll see the last three was all Fairview poly runs. He's coming back to the 1200 Turffontein, and that 10.91 was the last time he actually ran against Likeable. So Castratum, 57 kilos, now 1 up for 5 lengths, 60 kilos, 2 down for 1.5. So based on collateral form, Likeable should beat Begonia on that one run. So there's a lot of info that you need to digest. If you look at the Champagne Charlie's actual details, you'll see the last run was on poly, and when he debuted at Turffontein, he actually got backed in from 7 into 5.5, didn't perform, was 15 lengths behind the winner, but still had a decent 11.6 on the bat figure, which is, if you take that one run from Likeable away on the 1200, pretty close to the best. So those now bringing it back to the turf could be an indication that it's going to be hitting form again today. But yeah, the more you practice, the luckier you get. Girl Scout Gavin Smith's stablemate with Karkia, 1200 poly 7.11, the 1600 was too far, so 35, and then the 1200 poly at 8. But further down there was some turf grass figures as well. None of them actually stands out. So if I look at the two Gavin Smith runners, I'll probably be going for Champagne Charlie rather than Girl Scout. So in this race, my preference goes to Champagne Charlie, and then based on this, one collateral run Likeable, and then Begonia in third, and then probably Antonio Augusta based on this 9.23 little flash here, or otherwise Wonder Woman Girl Scouts for that third and fourth spot. And this, yeah, too much. There's only one race that's been shown, so we don't know. It could have been a hidden race. It could have been that he didn't show anything and he could win today. But the data doesn't show anything on his one run for Red Center so far. However, that could have been a false run race. So that on that one run, he doesn't have a chance to win this. Moving on to the second. And here, my top choice here is going to go to Echoes of Winter. P-Stat's not very strong, 45 races. The highest is 19 and 18 and 18 years, so you see he's not a highest. If I look at the detail though, I know Cliffy Miller and Muzieni, there's intent shown. The blinkers are being taken off. Last time he got backed in from a 10 to 1 into a 2.25 to 1 over the 1300. So that's huge. And he got a nice 4.29 bat for it, but that is on the poly. So now I want to see previously whether the horse had any preference between poly and turf. So these were all turf runs. Then the one poly run, he went from a 13 to a 5, so he does seem to prefer the poly. And then he went back to the turf to a 16 over the similar distance, and then poly back to a 4. So it does seem that he prefers the poly. That being said, Yeni was on him last time, ran third, and on him again today, and maybe Yeni advised that the blinkers didn't help, so they took the blinkers off again. So he's still going to be my first choice in this race. Then there's a straight-on connection here, therefore you see the joker and the joker, because if you look at the straight-on connection, you see here's the owner actually, JVA straight-on here, trainer, and jockey JVA straight-on. So yeah, could have been a setup for a very long time now to pull this off, because on debut at Scottsville was backed in from 14 into 8, and then backed in again from 5 into 3, and backed in there from 10 into 6. And then his last runs, 1,000 meters, both perhaps too short, and 1,200 meters, and now he's going back over the 1,400 meters, and judging on that 1,200 turf form, that 5.45 does give him the line bat horse. That's why there's a 0 on the line bat. The reason why that minus 8.08 is there is because he has done better than 0 over other distances, and that minus 8.08 is the best one over the 1,100 Scottsville. So definitely one to consider. Springbok Fever, Sivassamante is now scratched. Then Makaha Beach, yeah, got some very good support on the 1,400 poly from 5 into 3, and did improve to a 10, so something to consider there, as Makawa would have a decent enough chance to improve and be in the placings. And then Flowers of Night did much better on the poly, 6.4 against the turf, 19. And also got backed in on the poly and drifted on the turf from 7 to 14. So looks like they feel that the data suggests that they feel it's more a poly horse. Chasing Hard here, you'll see third run after a rest, that little 3 runner there, so something to consider, that he might have his best run as his third run after a rest. And then you see the consistency indicator, if he's always in the money for that bolt, for instance. But yeah, judging on all of this with the question mark of Echoes of Winter on the poly, given that he now takes the blinkers off, maybe that was what didn't help. Bougie retaining the ride. I'm going to go with Echoes of Winter as my first choice, Spring Fever as my second choice, Makaha Beach third, and Flowers of Night next best. I can't talk much for the first timers because I don't have much data for the first timers. I can see Weekend in Seattle is a joker. Montana Turner, she's got a top rated later, so Justin Turner is the brother, so could be something from it. But yeah, from the race runners, Echoes of Winter and Spring Fever is the two. Moving on to the third race, here I'm going to go with the favorite, Indie View, as my top rated, and you can see a huge, if I say huge, 8 lengths on the 42-day bat figure. Second is Prince of Heaven, again a Cliffy Miller horse, and this time not with Yeni on board. Jenny is on twice a saint, so very interesting to note that Jenny has preferred to go on twice a saint. Second run after a rest. Maybe the first run back from the rest didn't show anything, so now they're going to come and try. But given what the data is suggesting, there was big support 4.5 into 2.8 last time with Agrella now getting the ride back again, and Agrella's was a 10.5 on the bat, and Jenny on the 1600 poly was a 25 on the poly. Returning now back to the turf 1000 meters, did worse bat figures but over a shorter distance, so Prince of Heaven could probably get closer, and he's also got the gear change today. But given the data suggests IndyView is a really decent chance here. Looking at the P-stats here, a 28% chance to win for opening betting going to IndyView, and then flashing here 26% for IndyView as well, 28% on exotic ranking, which goes to a 16-1 horse called Hey Siri from the John Nell stable. So interesting. He did a 1200 Kenilworth, did a 1400 Kenilworth at the best line bat horse of the field, because that was 1400, which is in the range to the 1600, and then went off the boil. 1400 poly was again better, 13, and then maybe intentionally 1600 was absolutely useless, went backed in from 7 into 4. On the yielding also today is good going, so on the yielding as well, now today we go back to good. Hey Siri at 16-1. If he goes back to these kind of figures here, line bat horse here and that 13 there, Hey Siri can try to beat IndyView. So that's my view on this race. Is I think IndyView by Hey Siri, by Prince of Heaven by Heathcliff. That's probably your quartet. Looking at Heathcliff, which is the favourite, not really suggesting that he's all that great, not for the price in any case. There was some yielding and soft runs here, but his bat figures 15, 21, 19, 22 when heavily supported. 1200, 1400, 1.8 into 0.91, 4.5 into 3.5. Maybe it was because he didn't like the soft going, as you can see there, the blue, the water. And then went to Turffontein, after to Durbanville, 1250. Now he's carrying 4.5 more, and he's getting the blinkers taken off. No, last time those 3 runs with the blinkers taken off gave him 19, 21, and 15. So no great chance at 2.25. And for that reason, and given this 2.07 improvement on the poly here the very last time, when also supported 1.6 to 1.1, with Makotwa coming back, which is the stable jock, I think IndyView is pretty good for a win in this race. Moving on to the fourth. Yeah, and in that case, that Hey Siri is my second choice. Moving on to the fourth, we don't have any P-stats here. 2,400 meter class A, Association Pinnacle Stakes. So P-stats doesn't give me much of a guide yet. If I look at machine learning, as on the side here, then it goes to Barak, Divine Odyssey, and Jager Moon. So not good on, there's no green stuff in the machine learning, so we haven't learned enough because we haven't done much of the 2400 class A. So once we do, then these will turn into green as being more reliable. So all of this is on the tutorial videos, but let's hope that you learned some from today. Barak here, number 2 draw, Divine Odyssey, number 3 draw, Tara Lang, Joker, car straight on, retains the right. You can see first here, and that was 19 poly, 2 poly, 2000 turf, 27 turf, back to the 19 year, was probably a little bit too short, but did get the 0 bat. So back to the 2000 meters, I think Divine Odyssey has a really strong chance of getting back to winning ways. If we look at any collateral form with Divine Odyssey here, you see these other figures are high bat figures, so not really anything that can get close to that run from Divine Odyssey. This Jager Moon here, a 0, and then another 7 at 1600, 2000 to 7 as well. That's pretty decent, but this at the turf went to a 41, which is obviously not so good. So, and these are 30s, 2700 and 2000 on Divine Odyssey. That 9 and 18 is really standouts, and the last poly was still pretty decent because the bat figure was pretty decent, the adjusted time was pretty decent. So all this consider, I'm going to go with Divine Odyssey as my first choice here, and then probably between Barak Jager Moon for second, and Find Me Unafraid, then Ancient Times Sabrina Prodigy, and the last spot by Master Supreme. Moving on to the fifth race, and yeah, we again don't have P-stats, 1500 meters, they don't run a 1500 meter, but often class D. So looking at my machine learning here, and that's my 3 for my fantasy. That's how you pick your fantasy. You just click on that and choose your fantasy selections here. I'm going to go with those 3, Silver Slippers, Ancestral Prayer, and Global Goddess as my 3. They're 10 to 1, 3 to 1, and 25 to 1. No draw standing out. The more green, the more better the draw. Golden Archer has a question mark, change of stable. Old Horse Montana Turner has a joker here, gets the 1.5 kilo up because couldn't make the weight, but is a red horse, so has gone from a 67 all the way to a 52, or now a 50, lost 17 points or 8.5 kilos in the process. And then And We Danced is the line horse. So given that the third race is won by Sharon Courtson and Mokotwa on Indie View, you have to consider that the double could be coming from Sharon Courtson and Luke Mokotwa on And We Danced. The adjusted time is the highest in the field here by quite a little bit. The line bat is circled as the best, 6.82 lengths. The line bat horse being over for today's distance and today's course. That 0 there goes to his last run, 1600 Turffontein. Mokotwa was riding, backed in from 8 to 6, yielding going, and still did the line bat on yielding, so probably is going to be a bit better on the turf. So all that considered, let's just open it up a little bit. I do think that the horses that's got the strongest potential to win this race here is if you look at, I'm going to question myself on Ancestral Prayer, because the 1600 Turffontein, 21 bat, 1400 poly, 1 bat. So clearly the poly was much better. Now back on the grass, not looking so good, so I'm going to go against my fantasy choice to give that other choice to actually the horse I'll show you just now, the line bat horse. So that's also polyform 1, and then turf form no good. That's polyform 2, and then turf form no good. That's all poly down here to turf, also no good. So big difference. If you actually, we're going to put in a filter here so you can just filter on all the poly runs or all the turf runs to make that a little bit easier for you as well for the future. Global Goddess, interesting here because his last poly also 4.3, but he has actually been one of the few that has done that on the turf. 1200 Kenilworth, Doormeyer up 3.57, and you've got a 2.89 on the bat. So that's the lowest on the bat on turf form. And then Cliffy and Muzieni will have a decent enough day, so have to consider him. But again, poly 3, poly again 5, then go poly 14, and down here when we go to turf 18, 25, 22. So another horse that could get better, but he's not so great on the turf. So looking at the turf form, you have to consider And We Danced as the 1600 Turffontein Fairway last run. That line bat horse was the best here, so I'm going to give my fantasy selection rather to And We Danced based on his actual turf form. Like I said earlier, the more you practice, the luckier you get. The more time you actually have to actually look, the more you'll see. The ratings can't be perfect, and you can't every time just pick the top rated and expect the top rated to win in every race. You put in the effort, you get the reward, because everyone's learning, and so is the system as well. That's why we have big data switched on. We've got artificial intelligence and machine learning switched on, and that's why these weighted points is going to get better and better and better until every top rated wins. But yeah, that's not racing. Everything doesn't go perfect every time, but the data does leave a trace for when the trainers are pulling the wool over your eyes. So, that being said, I'm going to say potentially a Sharon Kotzen double coming here, and then Global Goddess is my next best on that 2.89 as a bet figure, 25 to 1. JP on board, they did very well last week together, even though Gavin didn't want to say much about that in his pre-race comments. And then Cliffy Miller and Muzieni on Super Slippers, if he can repeat those last two runs. Muzi did retain the ride, so hoping that those Fairview, he still was second, third, but the bat figure is not so great. Yeah, and then anything else where you can see that there was actually a little bit of a flash on turf form, you can throw in for trifectas and quartets, but I don't see much else there where it's flashing. That's what the data suggests. Okay, next race, we move on. The sixth. So in the sixth year, let's see what we see in the sixth. Yeah, interesting races. I ended up going with Right Choice in this race as my top rated, and I'll show you now why, but I could be completely wrong. If we start off with the P stats, 34 races, 1200 meter class C, top rated to win, finishing first, pops up here with a 57% on line bet. If I look down at the line bet horse, it's this record here on that 0 year, that goes to Right Choice. The line bet horse on this race, he's done better by 10 lengths, that's down here, and that's also on the turf, because the 1200 turf he flashed here with a minus 2.41, which is very good. The reason that one is not the line bet horse is because it's outside of the actual 280 days, because yeah, it's so far away. It was the 9th of November last year, but you have to be pretty decent at the Vol to win and again win. And now we have Kumalo coming back after he ran on the 1000 meter Fairview in the first run. Could have been too short, looks like it was too short from an 11 draw. Now he's bringing Kumalo back here, so I think Right Choice could be the right one, but it's only 5th on the ranking average, so maybe a bit of a hunch. The others to consider, Stolen Kiss, that 1200 Fairview Poly 3.2, the Turf Form 11, and there's some more Turf Form 9, that's pretty decent. Yeah, obviously the Right Choices, a lot of these records are very good there. So I'm going to stick my head out and say I'm going to a little bit go with Right Choices. A small chance, the better one for me. But yeah, it's just a hunch. Angel Depths on the 1200 Fairview form, 18 versus the 1000 meter form better. And then looking at the others like Paris Opera, 14 Fairview Poly 3.56, 12 on the turf, and then also the turf runs there wasn't that great. Waiaire at 10 to 1 with K Stradom had a decent turf 8.1, which is pretty good for the turf, and that brings him into the race here for me. That was a poly run again. That was no figures that's really standing out here. The exact course and the exact distance, the actual BAT CD run of the 1200 with JP on Catch the Cat, which is the stablemate, does bring this into the reckoning for Calvin Habib at 16 to 1. That being the exact course and distance 11.51 run. So on that I will give Catch the Cat a chance as well in a race that could be pretty tricky. So yeah, Catch the Cat, one to consider. Waiaira, one to consider. Pam's Princess, one to consider, with John Nell booking Mokotwa again. You can see he was third year. Paris Opera, one to consider. Angel Deaths, potentially, if he can do the 1200 better. Savannah Winter, the favorite. Right Choice being my first choice. And then Stolen Kiss from the Tara Lang yard. If Stolen Kiss can get to that kind of 3.2 that was done on the poly, versus if you see, look at the best on the turf was a 9. So yeah, that poly run was much better. Nothing else much I'm going to say about this race. 38% chance to win for Savannah Winter on P stats here. Greenie 30% year on Greenie points, and that goes to Right Choice, and then 30% year on the statistical form against Savannah Winter, 27% on total points against that goes to Stolen Kiss, and then 24 on Bat 42 for Stolen Kiss. The Bat 84 one goes to Iwaya, and that's also quite high percentage of 27%, but the one that's standing out here is the line Bat 57 on Stolen Kiss. Moving on to the 7th. And here, yeah, I'm going to go with Narcos, first choice, and then a 40-1 Slings and Arrows as my next horse for my fantasy. And the reason being is quite simple. I'm again looking at P-Stats 34 races, and I've got a 57% chance to win on my line bat horse, which goes to Narcos at 8-1. But if I look at the top rated to run a top 4, I got a 100% chance from 34 previous times on the line bat horse to run a top 4. Now that's pretty decent, and that's 6.8 on Narcos. So I'll look at it a little bit quick on the detail. Then I'm not so great on the jockey booking on this race, but you'll see that run when he won at 6.82 when Agrela was he was backed in from 8 into 3.5, so they clearly knew what they had under them. And then did a 1,000 too short, and then did a poly. So maybe today back 1200 Turfontein can pop up again today. The others to consider, if I look at point at that 6.82 run, then I'm looking at Turfontein 1200 runs, and not much there. Slings and Arrows is a 10.63 on the poly, but also did a very good 12.04 second for JP van der Merwe, and that run does bring him into the reckoning as well. Full Power, interesting runner, Muzieni on board. His best run was his last Bat 42 6.27, 25-1, changes the gear change here, and the runs 15.53, 7.05, 6.27 brings him in at that kind of 25-1 price as well. So do consider him as well with the gear change, and with Muzi on board again. Muzi could be booked for a reason here. And yeah, Brass Bell has a 15 and not pretty decent over the 1200 as well. Razor Red at 12 here, so was definitely improving recently on his bat figures. So one to have to include on that run. Tara Lang, third run rest, Joker, Ryan Munger booked, so Razor Red has to be considered. And I'll have to throw that into my pick 6 as well. Just add him as another 8th star so people can see that. And here, Paris Ricks, 1000 meter form 12 and 11, but then 1200 form 24-23, so it looks like he's better over the 1000. But that's the kind of things you can see on the ratings, and like I said, the more you look, the more you see. So yeah, bit of a tough race. I'm going to go with Narcos and Cliff Top and Slings and Arrows really as my top 3, but False Power is right in there as well, and Razor Red is also, and Paris Ricks is also in there. So yeah, 8th race. Now, as I showed earlier, that ranking average for the top rated is the best ahead on Montresor, and you can look at Montresor on his 42-day form, 2.21 next best, 9.67 lengths, and then on the 84 forms, 2.21 next best, his stablemate Bethel at 6.81. His stablemate Bethel is also the line bat horse. So interesting, Cliffy Miller and Cliffy Miller again. So yeah, Muzi is booked here, and Sandile Kati is booked on Bethel. I'll definitely include Bethel because if I look at the 1200 Fairview, merit rated 68 form, why Ramzan was running 100-1, but a 6.81 figure, which is the bomb roll combined with that great adjusted time figure, 6.81 lengths is better than any of Montresor's previous races, except for the very last 1300 Poly Fairview when he won with Ryan Munger on board, but that was on the Poly. So his best turf form, that's a 29, is no good. That's a 18. That's a Poly run. That's a 12 on the Vol 1400. And yeah, that's his best, 12.55 on the Vol 1400. So that's not as good as the 6.81 on Bethel. So definitely have to include Bethel in this race. And then we also have this little red Calvino here that does have the best back curve or consistency, because all of those runs are low enough to be consistently in the running. And he's 25 to 1 gear change Calvino, and he lost a lot, 79 to a 54 on the merit rating. Another red horse raised the Red Lantern. He was a 72, gone to a 60. So, bit of an interesting race. Jaguar Cat has the intentions. He straight on with the Joker, with Ndlovu here. You see the 50%, 75%. There's some great here with Jaguar Cat. So, another one here that could be in the reckoning. Then there's some more red ones running again in Global Ashworth, third run rested as well. So yeah, you could look into the details of all of them. I'm going to say Cliffy Miller with Bethel and Montresor, and then Calvino raised the Red Lantern, Jaguar Cat, and all the rest. And then moving to the last, and in the lucky last, I ended up between Cool Runnings and Goddess of Light, 10 to 1 and 16 to 1 as my first two. Yeah, which is pretty interesting. And then Hickey Stratum pops up again here after he was in the 8th race, so potentially he's trying the double, Conquer the World. Does have best adjusted time and exotic ranking. Looking at the probability stats in this race, 28% chance on Goal Ruler and 28% here on Conquer the World, 29% on Potente, 26% on Potente's Super Rule percentage, and then there's a few 20s as well, and Cool Runnings on a 22 on Greenie and a 21 on overall ranking. So pretty even, nothing's really standing out. And then I look at the actual detail of the turf form. I ended up with these as my fantasy selections. Cool Runnings has a stable change, third run rested with a blinker change. Now that's quite a little bit to absorb. 1200 Fairview, and you'll see it's a turf run, so going back all these poly runs, there goes to turf, and that was actually pretty decent, 11. So keep a hold of that 11 as the back curve horse as well. And let's look at some other turf forms here, 1160 and 1209 and a 7. And there's some more at 6, 8 and 6. So Goddess of Light, most definitely. Blinkers fitted as well for Zietsman Oosthuizen with a Joker in the pack. Had recent support at Turffontein, 25 into 14. So Goddess of Light's going to have to be in the reckoning here, and there's some very low bats figures as well there. So that's one to consider. Yeah, Potente's bat on the turf, not so lekker. Here's a 16 improvement on Gavin Smith with JP on Global Design. It is a red horse, 76 merit rating now, untrained, and they actually pay him to untrain the horse by 18 merit rated points or 9 kilos. So yeah, he's being trained to make the horse so bad that he's now having to carry 9 kilos less. Doesn't really make sense. Then the favorite John Nell, 16 into 8 to 1 the last time, 19, but his Turffontein is a 26 here. Then the best on this exact course and distance is that 16 Hickey Stratum and Conquer the World. So that 15.8 or 16 is the last run, so one to consider. He had some support as well. So yeah, I'll have to add Conquer the World based on his form at this course. Don Represado is not far off, 17 versus that 15. There's not much in it between the two. What I'm actually just trying to explain or show to you is that the more effort you put in, I have a real job as well, so I don't even have the time to put in all the effort. I just spend all the time to actually design and create the site. So yeah, if you put in the effort, you will reap the rewards. And if you do have the time, then you can sit and decipher the puzzle daily. We're getting better at it as the machine learning and algorithms kicks in and changes the weighting of the points as more and more data comes in here. But just from what we have, I'm going to go with the Red Horse Goddess of Light as my first choice here. And then Cool Runnings from Gavin Smith and Ramzan as my second choice. And then probably going to have to lean to the Global Design Potente, Conquer the World,
and the best bat CD horse that I saw here earlier. Where was that one? The 15 bat CD horse. That is Conquer the World. Yeah, so those ones. Don Reposado, Conquer the World with those 15s. Global on this 16, double design Potente with his recent improvement on the poly, but Goddess of Light with these low figures here is my first choice, and Cool Runnings with the improvement recently on the poly with one flash of a 7 on the or 11 on the turf is my second choice. Maybe Conquer the World should be my second choice, but yeah, 15 is not as good as the 11 on Cool Runnings. That's it, guys. Hopefully you've learned something. There's all the actual icons. If you hover over them, that'll explain things to you. And if you click on the tutorial, then that will also explain things to you. You can read all the stuff on the tutorial there. Hope you will have a great day.